and they're bad for fishing.
Robert Louis Stevenson said, "Wick is the meanest of God's towns on the baldest of God's bays."
Wickers are very proud of their town, and especially this year because we celebrate our 400th year as a royal borough. That borough status was granted by James VI of Scotland in 1589, one of 14 charters granted during his reign, and there are 69 in Scotland, before he in fact disappeared over the horizon to London in 1603. We have a Gala Queen celebration every year, held in July, and we have this year especially, as Quadricentenary year, we have many events. These celebrations have changed over the years. Perhaps 50 or 60 years ago, when Wick was one of the biggest fishing ports, herring ports in the world, we used to have a herring queen, and she was taken in by boat to Wick Harbour and was taken in procession through the town, as we still do in our gala night. We had herring queens here up until 1953, and some of these ladies who had that singular honour still live here in Wick.
I was the herring queen 40 years ago, in 1949. The selection was made by the pupils at school. They each had to vote. And the herring queen wore a white dress and a blue velvet cloak, which was made specially. The dress was made specially for her. The crown had little silver herrings on it, and it is still the same crown that is used for the gala queens today. The queen was received at the harbour and driven to the riverside for the crowning ceremony. After that, the procession through the town was much the same as it is today. The bit I liked best was the sailing into the harbour. And some of the very old fishing drifters are making a visit to Wick this year for the Quadricentenary celebrations.
It's nice to see the old boats now again. Bringing back memories of when I was a fisherman. That was more than 60 years ago on the steam drifter Mayberry. About this time of the morning we would be coming in and landing our catch and jostling for a berth in the harbour. I suppose at that time there would be a fleet of about 150 steam drifters. We were all lined up in the harbour, crammed as close as possible so that every boat could land their herring at the same time. When we landed our catch, we were ordered out immediately because there'd be boats lying in the bay waiting to land their catch. It's not always easy to land the fish in Wick because if the fleet was numerous, some boats were ordered to Stronsay, which is in Orkney. There would be about 10,000 between fishermen, coopers, packers and gutters employed at the harbour. And also the coal lumpers, we can't forget on them because they were quite numerous. There was 3 or 4 coal yards and employed about 12 or 15 men each because they used long planks about 30 feet long If they didn't keep in time with the plank, they just used to sway up and down. They landed in the harbour cool and all.
There were 3 women in the crew, 2 gutted and 1 packed. And we'd got about 40 herrings a minute. But it was dirty work, but we quite enjoyed it. And it was healthy work. There were 1,300 herrings in the barrel, and we were paid 8p a barrel between 3 of us. The herring was very smelly, and I didn't feel it because I worked at it, like. But when my sister would come home for her lunch, she couldn't sit at the table. I had to go outside and have my lunch in the porch.
To visualise the harbour then and to see it now is such a vast difference. In those days, when those roads were being used, there was no tar macadam, and you can visualise it on a wet day. It was just a morass, and they had a machine which they called a gutter snipe, and they dragged all the mud to one side of the road to let the carts pass. But they, being so deserted now, you can hardly visualise it as being such a hubbub of curing and gutting and packing.
I've been harbour master here for 14.5 years, and the port is not as busy as it should be or used to be. It's no longer a designated herring port, and herring are not really landed here anymore. There are some whitefish, but not in very large quantities. Our work mainly consists of maintenance. There is an oil supply base in the harbour, but it is underused. It was used during the strikes a few years ago when the other bases were closed, and then we had supply boats queuing up in the bay to get in. Lack of proper breakwaters give no shelter from the easterly gales. Way back in 1883, these were proposed to be built at Wick, but it involved the siting of a prison at the south head and the use of the convicts in these days to build them. Unfortunately, the people of Wick didn't take kindly to the idea of having prisoners, and instead they went to Peterhead because the MP for Peterhead took up the project and these breakwaters landed up there. The other reason is the lack of fish stocks.
Now the situation with the herring fishing is that really it was overfished, very much overfished, because of the drifter. And that led to the demise of the herring fishing. White fishing has gone on, and now with the super boats that they have and trawlers, the seine netter has disappeared or is fast disappearing. And with the present quota system, unfortunately, the chaps are going to have to tie up next month. However, we have other industries here in Wick.
Grampian Records was founded in 1964, and we started as a recording studio at that time. But 15 years ago we moved into the cassette manufacturing side. We started with a capacity of 10,000 cassettes a week, and we're currently producing 500,000 cassettes a week. We're classed as the second biggest independent in Britain, and we manufacture product for people like EMI, CBS, Warner Brothers, Reader's Digest, in fact all the majors we supply for. The fact that we're situated so far north, right up in the northeast here, is certainly not a burden. I mean, all our customers say to us, how do we do it, you know? But in fact, from receipt of materials, we can actually ship product, turn it round within 24 hours. So in actual fact, we can compete with all our London companies, our competitors, very, very well. Obviously the workforce is very, very good. They're very flexible and are very willing to work any hours if necessary.
With Osprey Electronics just along the road from Grampian Records, we have the same situation with workforce, first-class quality.
Osprey Electronics was established here in Wick in 1975, and although we didn't actually set up to be an underwater TV camera manufacturer, that has actually become the main product of the company, and it has gained the company a worldwide reputation. The company fairly quickly established itself in the international marketplace, and in fact gained a Queen's Award for export achievement in 1987, and we export to the four corners of the globe. And interestingly enough, included in that, in our export market, is Japan, and we consider it a fairly high achievement in exporting what the Japanese would regard as their technology into their marketplace.
Caithness Glass began glassmaking in Wick in 1961. The company was founded by Lord Thurso, probably because the Doonry thing in Thurso, the employment scene there was quite buoyant, and it was felt that we needed a wee bit more in Wick. Currently there are about 100 employees in Wick. The company has been recognised for producing very high quality produce. One of the items that we make, the Mastermind Trophy, engraved by Dennis Mann, one of our leading engravers, which I feel is known over the world. And we have now produced a bow for the Quated Centenary, engraved by Dennis Mann. We have factory shops at the four locations, and currently at Wick we're expecting to have about 100,000 visitors going through the factory.
Another tourist attraction is the Heritage Museum, which is a fascinating place. Ian Sutherland, who is chairman of the Wick Society, is a mine of information on the history of Wick and its surroundings.
For the centres about is Wick and his connection with the sea and the fishing, and its displays also include all the things that were connected with it. The name of Wick comes from the Viking colonisation of Scotland in the 10th and 11th centuries. It comes from the word Vic, that's V-Y-K, just means a bay. But nothing very significant happened in Wick until 1588, when, as a result of a dispute between the clans, the Mackays attacked Wick and burnt it because of this argument they had with the Sinklers. The following year, 1589, the Civic Fathers applied to King James VI of Scotland to have it made a royal borough. And this year is, of course, the celebration of the quartercentenary of that event. A copy of the charter hangs on the wall of the town house, and the granting of the charter meant that the town had special tax concessions, and of course, which was much more important, it took it in under royal protection in the event of any further trouble. One of our more illustrious residents have been Robert Louis Stevenson himself, of course. He lived in Wick for about 3 months while his father was constructing the ill-fated breakwater in Wick Bay. It was knocked down 5 times before they finally abandoned it, and Stevenson never forgave Wick for this, which represented, I'm almost sure, was the only failure his family had as civil engineers. He described Wick as being the meanest of God's tunes and the baldest of God's bays, or words to that effect. And he, later on, of course, I think he took it back a bit. He repented because he found a lot of his imagination and his writings was founded on what he had seen in Wick when he was younger. When he was older and more mature, he recalled his time here in a more kindly way altogether. He thought of the peace and tranquility he found at the castles of Sinclair and Gurnago on the shores of Rees Bay, and in fact, this is what he wrote on the subject. There in the bleak and gusty north, I received perhaps my strongest impression of peace. I saw the sea to be great and calm, and the earth in that little corner was all alive and friendly to me.
I've been farming here now for nearly 30 years, although I was born on the neighbouring farm there, some 30 years before that. And here we run a mixed enterprise of beef cattle, North Country Cheviot sheep, and some grain. Caithness is well known for its North Country Cheviot sheep. That's the sheep that Sir John Sinclair took north 200 years ago, approximately. And he took 500 ewes from the borders up to his farm in Berrydale. And they multiplied from there, and they're now all over Caithness and Sutherland. And they've done very well up here, and they've grown to a much bigger sheep than their cousins in the south, where we have the South Country Cheviots. To farm in Caithness, farmers have really got to work very hard to cope with the adverse weather conditions. It's really a sort of survival of the fittest here. And this is borne out, I think, by the fact that when Caithness farmers go south, they usually do very well in other areas. And on the contrary, other people coming north don't last very long up here.
The farmhouse is in a very exposed position. It's beautiful in summer, and it's always nice in summer, but in the winter it's different. It's very spectacular, and well, it's majestic sometimes with the waves and the sea. But I grow flowers quite well here. We're lucky we don't get lots of frost. And I'm quite pleased with what grows here. We're only 2 miles from Wick. And Wick has a very active community, a lively community, and lots of social things for older folk perhaps. But I'm not quite sure what there is for the young folk. I'm not quite sure just what the future holds for them.
Now that I've left school, I hope to go up and train to become an electrical and electronic engineer. To do this, I'm going to have to go down south. I think I'm going to Robert Gordon's in Aberdeen. But once I get qualified, I'm going to try and get a job. Hopefully I'll go abroad for a couple of years before I try to settle down. I'd like to come up to Wick to work, settle, get a family and that. but there's no jobs up here. The only place I could work would be Rolls-Royce, Dunray or Osprey, but there's not much jobs up there. So the chance of me coming back to Wick is very minimal. So I can see myself, once I go, that's me, I've gone for good. There's nothing to keep me up here at all now.
After doing a 5th year in Wick High School, I was lucky enough to come straight out and go into a job in a boutique in Wick. I like the job very much as I'm working close to the community, which is a very close community, and they're full of very nice people. They're easy to get on with and very easy to work with. I'm hoping to get married in the near future to my fiance, who is also a Wicker, and maybe settle down then here in Wick, which I do like, and be a good place to bring up children. It's very quiet and safe, and you wouldn't have any worries of leaving your children in the garden or anything. It's very safe.
The county show is an occasion that everybody looks forward to. Plenty of Wickers come to it because everybody sees friends they haven't seen since last year.
Queen Mother is one of our great assets in Caithness. She bought the Castle of May about 1953, in the early days of her widowhood, when I think she found the solitude and peace of Caithness a great help in her sorrow. She restored the castle most beautifully in accordance with a Caithness traditional building and laid out beautiful gardens all round it. And these gardens are open to the public in aid of the nurses when the Queen Mother is not in residence. The Queen Mother is a freeman of the Royal Borough of Wick, and this year she is honouring us in our Quatercentenary year by planting a tree at Wick Riverside, which will be known as the Quatercentenary tree. We are very grateful to the Queen Mother for the way she visits Wick and takes part in so many events in the town and also in the county.